I'm just trying to get over Lynn, to be honest. I'm confused. You had to put your social media into lockdown.
There was one lady that was so obsessed with me. She 58 tweets about Ben, a Ben from Come Dine With Me. So she's got a fan. So I was approached to go and work as an unregulated financial advisor in Moscow.
With Vladimir?
Well, close to. I had to leave the country very, very, very quickly.
Welcome to our first episode of We Built This Business with Dan and
Dan.
Very excited. We have our first guest today, Ben Thompson. Welcome to We Built This Business. Hello.
Thank you for having me. I'm pleased to announce my name isn't Dan.
Yeah, you're lucky there. There's two of us here.
Welcome to our podcast studio. We literally threw it together yesterday. Bits and bobs. Have no idea what to do in a podcast. We've got microphones. We've got some fancy lights and stuff. What do you think, Ben? I mean, I know you are in the podcast world.
Be
already.
honest. Be honest.
You've either got a podcast studio or you've got a shopping problem on Amazon. It's one or to the other, but you've got microphones, you've got speakers.
What do you think of the headphones, first of all? Are they comfortable?
They're amazingly comfortable. I'd recommend them to a friend.
That's good.
20
That's
quid
good
well
feedback.
spent. 20 quid well spent.
And also, we've got some snacks today. So we did a test run actually a couple of days ago, and we made a list of problems that we could foresee in the future, and we should sort out before the next one. And I wrote all these problems down, and the only one I've rectified was we need more snacks on the table because we didn't have any.
That's true.
I've prioritised here and gone for the snacks, top of the list.
Exactly, yeah. All the other audio problems, don't worry about them.
Anything else I can talk about that's not business relevant before we begin?
I'm excited to get into it, Dan.
Okay.
I just want to get into it.
All right, Ben. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now in this present moment. What's business like? What are you doing?
Yeah, so far too much. I'm like one of those, I guess, classic entrepreneurs who finds it difficult to say no. So my core business, my 5-day a week business, 60, 70 hour a week business is a recruitment business, Thompson and Terry Recruitment. I also own, now 100% own, a networking business, the Oxford Business Community Network. I also run my own radio show. And historically, I've done a little bit in property, and that property bit is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. Unintentionally, not that I'm keen on becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And also invest in scale up. So my strategy for 2023 and 2024 is to build a portfolio of businesses that I'm investing in and advising a little bit. But you'll be pleased to know, don't take too many hours a week because there's not too many left over.
So you're 60, 70 hours on a recruitment business as well as all the other enterprises. How do you fit that in?
If you ask my wife, she'd say not very well. But Dan, you get it. You're exactly the same. Is in the world of business, you have the best intentions of, actually, I'm going to leave at 4:30 and walk the dog. Actually, I'm going to do this. But from my point of view, we're, as a tiny business, like a really tiny business, we're fortunate to have some quite big clients. Those big clients are hiring at the moment. I think we'll talk later in the podcast potentially about the world of maternity leave. And, you know, my number two's on maternity leave. We've got clients that are actively recruiting, and I've got a junior team that are growing and will be great in the future. But actually, as a business owner, there's no one above you to do it. So you need to do it. And that
Someone's got to do it. That's
the reality. Yeah, that's the reality.
So obviously dialing back a bit, obviously, you know, you've got the recruitment business, that's the core business, but you've also got Oxfordshire's biggest networking event. So you could tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I've networked for many years. And in the early stages, I would go to any breakfast, lunch or dinner that didn't necessarily.
Is that because it was free, or?
I would pay for it, believe it or not. I'd pay for it, believe it or not. But my waistline hasn't done too well there. And
when I met you, you were 10 stone, to be fair.
And now I'm only 10 stone too.
And when I met you, I was only 10 stone.
It's a theme.
That's the theme. It's these snacks on this table. That's what you've done. And yeah, I attended a lot of networking events, and one of them I really enjoyed was the Oxford Business Community Network, run by Mike Foster. probably 2 and a bit years ago, I was talking to Mike and said, look, I'm looking to set up my own networking business. That was the thing that was in my plan. And I thought there was an opportunity there. And he said, well, why, rather than competing with me, why didn't you come in with me? So
Makes sense.
so half the business became mine. We changed it from
And what year was this? Sorry.
so according to Companies House, December 2020, but really January 2021. And we changed it from being a community organization that was always Mike putting his hand in his pocket because he wanted to give back, to a limited company, which was still community focused. We've got some very big members, but we've also got some small independents, and to a limited company that was designed to, yes, make a little bit of money, but at the same time do all of our charity work. And that was going really well. We doubled our membership. We became profitable. We had our largest ever event with 190 attendees almost. Wow. And we changed running 2 events a month to 10 events a month ish. So it really changed that business. And being totally honest, Mike and I have, a really good relationship. And a couple of months back, probably 3 months back now, in one of our one-to-ones about the business, he said, actually, I want out of this. Will you run with the baton? And so that wasn't part of the plan. But I think we all know in business, sometimes things aren't part of the plan.
So now obviously you're sole owner and Mike still attends those meetings, but you're obviously the one driving the business forward now.
Exactly. So Mike's just a fan, just an attendee, just a member. Myself and my administration team behind me are the people that run that.
And I've attended a number of OBCN events over the years, and there's some of the friendliest networking events that you can do. You can just turn up. You always get say hi to, everybody talks to everyone. There's no groups, cliques and stuff like that you get with other groups. It's a great event to go to. So obviously, you're now taking it on yourself. As well as your recruitment business, but you also say you've got investments in other areas as well. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah. So being totally honest, going back, I suppose, in half a sentence, OBCM wasn't in the plan in terms of taking ownership
just own it
this
now.
year. Yeah, it wasn't in the plan. So my plan really was to invest in. I wanted to invest in something purposeful, and I wanted to invest in an e-commerce business. Those are the 2 things that I wanted to do. And
what was the reason behind wanting to invest in an e-commerce business?
More scalable firstly. And if I'm being totally honest, hopefully none of my clients are listening. I wanted a business that wasn't really client focused and really dependent on me, because I think that within the recruitment business and networking business, actually in reality, people want me. If I'm recruiting for somebody, whether it's a senior role or a junior role, ideally clients want me. So I think I wanted something that was really scalable, and I think I wanted something that would test me, because I know nothing about e-commerce or knew nothing about e-commerce. And I think for me, mental stimulation is probably as important, if not more so, than finances. I'm not overly driven by money.
We'll have to get onto that later.
Which I think is quite rare for an entrepreneur, isn't it? I think it is quite rare, but I think that was something that I wanted to do. So
what did you end up doing then? So obviously you wanted to get into e-commerce. How did you get into, and what did you actually get into?
So I did a lot of research, and a brand that came onto my agenda were actually on Dragon's Den. So Zip Us In, which is the panels that go into coats. So Dan, you'll know a lot more about this. But when a lady is pregnant, she gets bigger and she has a baby growing in her. And off the back of that, the most expensive item in most people's wardrobes is their coat. So in the winter, they can't then get the coat round their
And the body.
their bump. Yeah, there we go. Thanks for helping with that. But then also, then once you have had the baby, you then have a baby carrier, and you've got the baby. Do you put it inside you can't put it inside the coat, so then you've got a coat on the baby, then you've got a coat inside. But actually, the idea of Zip Us In is the coat goes around the baby, and then if the baby gets hot, or if you get hot, you just take the panel out, and great, your coat's open. So that was on Dragon's Den.
Is that where you saw them, and did you then contact them, or?
No. So I did see them on Dragon's Den, and I remember thinking that's quite cool, because fast-moving consumable fashion, particularly maternity fashion is the biggest cause of global warming, full stop.
Wow.
Which I was really surprised. But maternity fashion goes into landfill more than anything else, full stop. And I saw them there, and we reached out to them to actually speak at an OBCN event. Kate, the founder, said, yes, of course I will. And I was really shocked in the morning because I thought she was a lot more local, that she drove 2 hours to speak at our South Oxfordshire networking event. And
Fantastic.
I was just amazed. So we connected on LinkedIn, and she mentioned that she was looking for investors. I was looking to invest, and I've done exactly that. And I think one of the things that she's really looking for from an investor was, yes, partly money, because we've got big plans to really scale globally. They're all already a #1 Amazon bestseller. But actually, it was very much about putting together a board of investors that have got skill sets. And one of the big plans for this year is to build the people team. And that's my absolute sweet spot. So I think it was something that was purposeful, really good for the environment, an e-commerce business that's scaling and doing a lot of work on Amazon, but a business I felt I could add value to.
Do they use you for recruitment?
Not at this minute in time. There is no need. So from my point of view,
They don't use other recruiters.
no, not as far as I know.
They haven't told you that yet.
No, not this minute in time. But I think from my point of view, I think what I quite like about that is that, yes, I've got quite a sizable interest in the business, but I've got a very low involvement in the business. So yes, I go to quarterly management meetings. Yes, I'm always at the end of the phone. Kate and I speak from time to time. But in reality, I'm doing very little. And I think from my point of view, I'm somebody who gets bored very easily in business. And I'm somebody that quite likes something new and shiny.
Yeah.
And I think that my recruitment business is tiny, but it's profitable. And my long-term goal is to retire early. It pays my pension and it pays my life. So I don't have the capacity to take on something big. So I want lots of little things that I've got small involvement in around that.
Can I just ask you a question about Dragon's Den?
Yes.
I love Dragon's Den. Did this person with this idea actually get an offer at all on the show?
So the short answer is no.
I'm assuming no, because you've got the opportunity.
But there are still ongoing conversations there. There
Oh,
really
really?
are.
Yeah.
So Dragon's Den, and I've been on TV a couple of times.
You've been on Dragon's Den?
No, not on Dragon's
okay.
Den. But it's scripted, isn't it? Let's be honest. It's a scripted show, and there's 3, 4, 5 months of due diligence before you actually get onto the show. And actually, once they get on stage, they already know whether they're going to get an investment or not. So
Ruined the whole show for me there, Ben. Thanks.
your podcast has ruined Dragon's Den for the country. We're all going to get sued.
We'll have Stephen Bartlett on no time telling us otherwise.
I'm sure you will.
So tell us about, you mentioned there about you've been on TV a few times.
Yes. So outside the world of business, I quite like the sound of my own voice. So recently I was on Come Dine with Me and was one of the most hated people in the nation. The nation was very much Team Lynn, as opposed to Team Ben. So yeah, I was somewhat of a comedy act on Channel 4's Come Dine with Me.
Have you been asked back?
No.
Not to your knowledge.
No. The final phrase was, I would probably never apply for anything in TV related ever again.
So did you? How do you know that they were Team Lynn? And were you getting any notifications on your social media?
Yeah, a little bit. So Thompson and Terry had to become private for a brief period of time, and I had to make all of my profiles in lockdown for a brief period. There was one lady that was so obsessed with me. She 58 tweets about Ben from Come Dine with Me. So she's quite a fan.
And are you still with her? She's your wife, is that right?
Yeah, unfortunately so.
So you actually had to go into, I'm confused. You had to put your social media into lockdown.
I was amazed. I'm an old man, but I'm amazed by the younger generation of trolls. It's like a thing. Like people have this as a hobby, so they wait until a TV program's on, and the profiles that were tweeting me were doing it from the show before, and they find the people on each show, and and turn it into their mission to
make your life unhappy.
yeah,
essentially.
no, exactly.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So obviously you're now back on social media,
Yeah.
and people aren't, we're not in danger here, is what I'm
No.
trying to find out.
But potentially after this podcast,
We could be. Okay, look out for someone.
It says I've got a fear of becoming famous now, which is probably going to happen.
Well, when Lynn comes knocking on your door, Dan, you say it's the other Dan.
Lynn was incredible. I miss Lynn.
I'm sure she'll be back if you DM'd her.
What was your score?
I came last.
Ah, shouldn't have asked. Sorry.
So I'm just trying to get over Lynn, to be honest. The fact that she's messaged you 58 times.
Oh no, it wasn't Lynn
Yeah.
that messaged me 58 times. Lynn blocked me on everything. Lynn never wanted to see me ever again.
So Lynn is the champion.
So Lynn was
A 10 out of 10.
Did Lynn Wynn come dine with me? I'm not sure, but I think Miss Trunchbull in Matilda. She was a Miss Trunchbull. Well,
Sound like some characters
Yeah.
at your dinner.
yeah, she was a former mistress. She was I almost called her a headmaster there. That's probably why she didn't like me particularly. But yeah, she was the character.
I'm actually feeling a little bit starstruck right now, Ben. You seem to be a bit of a celebrity. But we're going to go back in time now. We're going to go back in time to where it all started. So where did it all start?
Well, where it all legally started was with Thompson and Terry. But I was always a bit of a weird kid. Always a bit of a weird kid. And always trying to make money. And when my friends were getting pet rabbits or hopefully a puppy, every kid wants a puppy, don't they? But I know your children are fortunate enough to have a puppy, Dan. But I asked for chickens because I had done a bit of research and I realised that I could sell chicken eggs to a family friend who had a bed and breakfast because I asked where they bought their eggs from. So for my birthday, as this height, which obviously nobody can see on a radio, I must have been 8, 9, something like that. I'm not sure. I got these 3 chickens, and I started selling the eggs to a family friend's bed and breakfast, and then I was reinvesting my money from my chickens to get more chickens. And in my 3-bedroom house in South Abingdon, I had 18 chickens in the back garden, and was making 50 quid a week. Which pretty comfortably every week, selling my eggs to bed and breakfasts across Abingdon. And to be fair, if I put a parent hat on, although I'm not a parent, I must have been a dream kid in a way, because actually, once I got to the stage, I cleaned them out every day, like without fail. And once I got to the stage where it became less cool, I sold all of my chickens, and I also sold the branding that I'd made on my 1998 computer, and sold it as a job lot, and that was done. So
18 chickens.
18 chickens.
That's a lot of chickens.
In a 3-bedroom.
How many eggs a day would you get from that?
You would get 15-ish, because they weren't like your big commercial brands. Like I also did. So bearing in mind I was 8, let's say. I did quite a bit of research, and there's a chicken called a Moran that lays really.
So you bought a specific chicken.
Really brown eggs and really bright yolks. So my family friend, who is still a family friend in his 80s now, he was like, seriously, like we spoke about this probably only a couple of years ago, and he was saying like their guests in the bed and breakfast were absolutely amazed by the chicken eggs, and they were always asking like, where can they get it from? Because if you feed chicken sweet corn, the yolks go really bright red off these Moran chickens that. So you're already thinking about branding when honestly, you were 8 years old. Looking back, I did it to make money, and I really enjoyed the business side of things. But actually, my journey from that, when I remember, and my mum and dad always talk about it, when I sold it and stopped, I said I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to build businesses. And I didn't use the phrase entrepreneur there. I used the phrase business owner, but
that was your first kind of eye opener into actually making your own money and bringing a product from nothing into basically making some money from it, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And a birthday gift, and not even a particularly generous birthday gift. Not in an ungrateful way, but 3 chickens didn't cost much more than a couple of rabbits. Like it was a, maybe, I don't know, 50 quid or something. Like it was a very normal gift, and I did the work myself, and I never had any help with any of it. I did it myself. I once the first B&B couldn't take as many eggs as I was giving them, I went to a second B&B. So 2 B&Bs had my chicken eggs, and I even sold eggs to my parents as well with any leftover
You
eggs.
sold them to your parents who were housing them. Were they charging rent?
No, they weren't charging rent. So again, I negotiated a good deal. Negotiated a good deal.
From obviously, I mean, that's one of the most impressive stories I've heard from an 8-year-old. That's incredible. But from there, did you go obviously a number of years until you then went to Thompson and Terry, or what happened after that? Did you have any other experiences?
Yeah. So being totally honest, the reason why I stopped is I started getting quite good at rugby. So I played at a decent level, and through my teens, I went from, I suppose, being just a big kid to a kid that was relatively good at rugby. And up until, I suppose, from sort of 17, 18, it was looking like I was going to make it as pro. I was going on trial to Premiership teams, and I got offered a deal with Saracens just before my 18th birthday, and then got hit by a car and ended up in a wheelchair before I ever played a minute of rugby for them.
Say that again, sorry.
So yeah, I got hit by a car doing 80 miles an hour and ended up in a wheelchair for a year with a bleed on the brain, a broken foot, and technically I'm brain damaged. So
Wow.
So that's another bomb to drop into the story. But so from that point of view, I had to, I think a COVID word is pivot, isn't it? I had to go from early wanting to be good at business to that midpoint where I just really enjoyed playing rugby, to that very brief spell where I thought, actually, I might make it, I'm all right here, to being in a wheelchair with quite a serious brain injury. And actually, even, today, you and I have played five-a-side together, and the bit of my brain that is really impacted is I don't have any coordination at all. So, and I still have memory problems. But from that point of view, I thought, okay, so what can I do? I'd already got relatively good grades at school. I was quite academic in my early years. But because I was having big memory problems, I thought, I can't go to a good university and do a degree. What I'm going to do is, what can I do? I've always been quite good at talking. So my first ever job was working in a payday loan cold calling call center that doesn't exist anymore. And I became their global top performer in their history at selling payday loans over the phone.
You were in a wheelchair. How did you, or obviously, did you get yourself out of the wheelchair? What did you...
Yeah, loads of experts, medics, and to be fair, the latter wheelchair, the problem wasn't that I couldn't really walk, although I did learn how to walk again. It was more my balance, and so the part of my brain that damaged was my coordination. So somebody with a big neck brace on all down their body, it was more that they didn't really want me to walk for a while because I kept passing out and I kept falling. So it's more about kind of building coordination back, and my coordination will never completely recover, and it never has. But life goes on. You learn to live with it. So
I mean, it's incredible that you are then able to do sport. So like I knew you through being in goal, for example, and usually a goalkeeper needs coordination.
Yeah. So if you think back to goal, the reason why I play 5-a-side as opposed to 11-a-side is because I was always, to be fair, in recent years, that's a very big exaggeration, but I was always fit and healthy, and I could throw myself at the ball, but not necessarily catch the ball, which is the point. In the 5-a-side, you're not allowed to go in the box, are you? So yeah, it's. I think I think I was incredibly fortunate to walk away, and I was incredibly fortunate, as you say, to be able to play sport again, albeit at a bad level.
Well, I obviously you were saying about the loss of memory. How does that affect you to this day?
In quite a small way, because I think as a business owner, I build the right people around me. So I employ really intelligent, really organized people to work with me, and actually I focus on what I'm good at and build the team to fill the gaps in around me. So does it really affect me very often? No. And yeah, I live a pretty normal life, but actually I think that when I go back to, I guess, kind of after that, I walk straight into a job, and I was just focusing on, my first job was, okay, what could I do, and start building my CV. And then each job from there, I had to, I guess, in employed jobs, think about the skills that I needed to run a business, but the skills that I could do within quite a serious brain injury. But at the same time, I never ever announced that, so none of my employers really knew about it, and,
Yeah,
and most of them didn't notice it.
We've known each other since about 2016, and I was not aware. So yeah, obviously, hats off to you. So obviously, you went into your first job as in payday loans, and you did fantastic there. Where did you go after that?
So I I've got another good story for you actually. So I was approached to go and work as an unregulated financial advisor in Moscow.
With Vladimir?
Well, close to. I had to leave the country very, very, very quickly. Yes, so I worked in Moscow as an unregulated financial advisor. Bit off far more than I could chew, and we were selling to, I guess, high net worth individuals that tended to have short careers. So we're selling to like a lot of footballers, politicians, etc., etc. And yeah, just watched the news about Moscow, which will probably explain why when I came back quite quickly. So yeah, came back to the UK.
Can you just explain why you had to come back quite quickly?
Yes, it's a very different environment. So the laws in Moscow are really, or in Russia, full stop, are very different to the UK. So you could get somebody disappeared very, very easily there, and the law there is if you get somebody to disappear, even if you were found out, the person who got them to disappear is in trouble, but you aren't. There's no, I forget the name of the law, that if I say hit Dan, if you can get in trouble for hitting Dan, but I can't get in trouble for doing. So the drug trade there is huge, because the big drug dealers are paying people to go and buy a load of drugs and then taking a cut of it.
Yeah.
But back to point. I was completely out of my depth. I was employed. The person who employed me is now in prison. And there's lots of newspaper articles of what he did with the UK government.
Wow.
And yeah,
So did you apply? How did you get into that? Did you apply for it in the newspaper?
No. So the recruitment consultant that that placed me in my first ever job, of course, like any recruitment business, got feedback after 3 months, and the feedback was after 3 months, wow, he's selling more than anyone, and by a very long way. And he then got quite a lot of inheritance. He moved over to Moscow, bought himself a Lamborghini, quite literally.
Wow.
And invested into this business that were a firm of IFAs, but over there's no such thing as the FCA that you have in England or Britain. It is completely unregulated. So he was earning very silly money, and you could earn very silly money, but it is a very dangerous job. And for, me quite well, Dan, and for somebody that, particularly in my younger years, found it quite difficult to keep my mouth shut at times. It wasn't.
I can imagine you in a Moscow nightclub getting a little bit tasty with a couple of the locals.
It's very interesting you say that. That was my first experience on my first night, and yeah, it was it didn't get much better from there.
Okay, so you've obviously, you're back from Moscow.
Yeah.
What happens next?
So yeah, two jobs. So launch Groupon in Oxfordshire, when nobody had heard of the voucher site. And shortly after that, I was calling all of the radio station I was working for at the time, Jack FM. I was calling all of their advertisers and say, why spend money on radio advertising? Come and do a Groupon deal. And Jack FM got in touch with me and then asked me to go and work for them and introduce the voucher offering. So you swap your products. So if you're a gym, you can swap 20 gym memberships for a radio advertising campaign, and we'll sell them on the radio. So I was involved in that, and those were two jobs I absolutely loved. And actually,
Jack FM is obviously the radio station.
Yeah,
sorry.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So two jobs I really enjoyed, but actually, I think by the Moscow point, I had got back to that 8-year-old boy that wanted to set up a business, and really my next two roles were about giving me the skills and the platform to really set up a small business. So I wanted a job that was within my CV, but a job where I could learn, I guess, innovation, but also I was working with lots of small businesses. I was doing networking. I was doing all of those things, waiting for the opportunity and researching. And one of my clients at Jack asked me to go into business with him. And I did.
So one of your clients, Jack? Sorry.
So one of my clients at Jack FM.
Oh,
so,
at Jack FM.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so Mike Terry that you know he was working full time in recruitment, and he also had a football coaching business at the time, and which we're doing a Jack FM deal. And he said, "I'm thinking about setting up a recruitment business." But the recruitment business he had worked for had never had any sales element. He was always filling jobs, but he wasn't selling. And he said, well, I want somebody a bit commercial, a bit salesy to do it with me. So we set up Thompson and Terry together, and that's how it all started.
Okay, amazing. So obviously we've gone from Moscow to, are you working now in your bedroom, essentially, or spare bedroom?
Yeah. So first probably 9 months of setting up Thompson and Terry was what was the spare bedroom. In fact, it was, in both cases, it wasn't even the spare bedroom. It was a desk in a room at our parents' house.
So were you working together in the same room?
No, we're both working from our houses. We were going to our Costa coffees probably a couple of times a week. And that was our business in the early stages. And I think that, I'm sure we'll talk more about it, but the early stages of our business wasn't what you read in business books. It was, we put 500 quid into the business. And
is that 500 quid each?
Yeah. In fact, no, I think it's 500 quid between us. We put 250 quid in each. And we had a recruitment business with access to no job boards, no clients. And I had never worked in recruitment myself before. And that was our plan of setting up a recruitment business.
So this always interested me, but how did you get your first customer?
So I had never worked in recruitment, but I thought, okay, so who do I know that might recruit that I can convince to give us a go? So I mentioned before about property, which I don't think we've mentioned so far. So in early stages of my life, I bought a rental flat and stayed living at home with my mum and dad. Then I bought another one. The letting agent that I was using, I looked on their website, I saw they were recruiting. So I emailed the letting agent that had found me my tenants and said, can you introduce me to the person who looks after your recruitment? And in my whole working career to this date, my first ever client meeting, I knew nothing about recruitment really. And it was a really tough hour. But yeah, we took the jobs on, then we filled them.
Wow.
And being honest, if I look at my business now back to back then, it was so embarrassing how we filled them back then. And actually how we filled them was probably luck. But over a 3-month period, we got it, and yeah, it went well.
So how did you fill them? Obviously, you've got to find a candidate, so did you find them through your website or?
So back then we didn't even have a website. So we had no access to job boards and we didn't have a website for probably our first 3 months. I had LinkedIn Premium already. And back then it was probably, it's weird to think that 8.5 years ago that recruiters didn't really use LinkedIn very much, but they didn't. And we used LinkedIn Premium to message people on LinkedIn about this job we had. And yeah, we found somebody, and actually, weirdly, the person who got that job, albeit 8.5 years ago, did well, and we actually knew of them. And weirdly, we've just placed that person, albeit 3 jobs later, in a new business earlier today. So it's weird how that happens, isn't it? But yeah, it's full circle. But yeah, it wasn't conventional at the time. But I think that we had a clear vision for that business, and the vision was we were going to have a recruitment business that was better, but actually we didn't want to mess around with business plans for months and years. We didn't want to get ourselves in loads of debt and loads of finance. We thought, do you know what? Let's get into the market and let's learn recruitment from a position of doing, and let's just keep tweaking.
So you bootstrapped essentially the business with no money, no investment,
exactly,
and no idea of the market. Essentially, you just went for it.
Exactly that.
I think that's one of the the biggest probably recommendations is 80% of the battle is actually doing it. You can spend years writing the perfect business plan or talking about what you're going to do, but how much do you learn by just doing it?
I would say that I've learned 99.9% of what we do through just doing. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there in terms of the hardest thing. And I think the biggest reason when I talk to people who want to set up a business, so we've got 100 members at ABCM, the biggest thing is they just don't do it. That really is. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there. And
It's turning up, isn't it?
yeah,
That's what it is.
exactly. And I think that if I look at my businesses, particularly the recruitment business, it is a tiny business, but it's a profitable business, and it's a business with a good reputation. And I think the thing that separates our recruitment business to other recruitment businesses that we compete with, in inverted commas, is 80% of the first CV we send gets the job. The national average is around about 5%. And that's a stat that we sell everything that we do on. And that stat this year has gone up to, last year it was actually about 84%. So we need to up our marketing, which is the best ever year.
And do you think that's because, obviously, compared to traditional agencies, because you came from outside of the model that they've created and the way they've done things, that you were able to look at things in a different way? And why do you think it is that you're getting 84% success rate where the national average is 5%?
Again, you've hit the nail on the head. It was because we didn't come in with the traditional way of being a recruitment agency. So your traditional recruitment agency, if you go and work for 95% of recruitment agencies, that's a made-up stat, by the way, in the UK.
We don't check them.
Your job is to register as many CVs as you possibly can. You'll be targeted to get candidates to come to your office to register. And then once you've got a job on, you will look through your database and you'll send the 5 closest to the client and then hope that they go for the interview and hope somebody gets the job. Our point was, we're never going to register candidates. We take a role on, we completely understand it, and then we're be really thorough with the recruitment process to understand who we think would be the best person for the job, and then we'll send that person and really help them to prepare and get the job and be transparent to both parties throughout.
And that makes complete sense as a sales process.
It does.
You're effectively you're matching people to the role, which is what they, in theory, an agency should do. But what you're saying is they basically build their business model on stats.
Exactly that. And actually, if you look at the huge global brands in recruitment, they do what I was talking about a minute ago. Where our competitors were going right, we would go left. And it's really simple. And actually, I think if you look from a business point of view, has it been successful commercially? Maybe not, because although, yes, we are profitable, we're still a tiny business. And Hayes, as an example, there's nothing wrong with Hayes, are a huge global business. But that's how we did it.
So obviously you're saying you're a tiny business, but how many people do you employ? What kind of revenue are you up to at the moment?
Yeah, so as a business, we employ 3 plus me. In terms of revenue, we've been around about 150 grand, and of that 75,000 of that's profit, and that kind of criteria, 50% return on my investment, has always been what I've looked at in any business that I've done. And I think I had the conversation with you off air probably about a year ago. In the middle of COVID, I was in a really weird position because I had the reserves in my business to run the business for about 2 years without having to make a penny. And there was just myself and Aoife that's currently on maternity leave. And we were doing just the revenue that we had with the team. We had clients that would come into us and loved us and would never go into anyone else. And I think you said to me, Ben, why aren't you scaling? Why aren't you going mad?
Yeah.
And from my point of view, it's because my business always fits into my personal plan. And my personal plan is to earn X, which I have been earning for the last 7 years, and is to pay X into my pension, which I have been doing so for the last 4 years. And from my point of view, it's from the recruitment business, it's about to be the lowest risk business possible to keep my business costs down and keep the revenue at the right level. And in terms of my staff, I always want them to double my investment. If they're doing more than double my investment, I instantly pay them more, keep paying them more. And the reason that I do that is because I want to make them sticky, because then technically they probably can't earn elsewhere.
Yeah.
And that's the business model there. And I think,
I mean, that's the thing. It works. Is the other thing is, if you're bringing in the income that you want to bring in, that's fantastic. That's what everyone wants, isn't it? Essentially. So let's have a look at your obviously business partner when you set up was with you. How did you structure that partnership? Because obviously a lot of people will go into business with someone else. How did you set it up? And is he still with the business now, for example?
Yeah. So myself and Mike, I was probably coming in as somewhat of the apprentice in some ways, because Mike had run a business. I hadn't, apart from my company's house, unregulated chicken business. And so we had a 50-50 partnership, no partnership agreement. We didn't feel that it was a good investment. We would rather wait to get our job board after 3 months. And that was it. The original plan was for me to bring clients on in, for him to fill jobs.
So did you have like an agreement in place?
Not at all. We were registered on company's house, and we had 50 shares each. And
so 50-50.
Yeah, 50 shares each.
So no decision maker, essentially.
No, which in hindsight wasn't the best thing to do.
So I guess my question is, you're starting a limited company. In hindsight, it shouldn't have been like that. Why is it better to have not done that?
So it's all about really voting rights. So if you in a limited company, you have shares, and depending on the number of shares you have, you've got a voting right to that. So in my case, Mike, my the first business partner in the recruitment business, Mike and I get on really well. Really nice guy. But we had some of our most heated conversations about an office printer. And we just could not agree on this office printer. And I thought he was being ridiculous, and he thought I was being ridiculous over this office printer. And actually, if we had a partnership agreement in place, or if I had 51%, or if he had 51%, actually, in some ways, that would have never happened. But I think that if someone's listening, and what should they do in business, they don't necessarily need to have more than 50% shares. You just need to spend money on a decent partnership agreement. Because actually, I think that we all would want the best deal that we possibly can. But I think that sometimes, and I see this so regularly in businesses, sometimes business owners go into a partnership with the best intentions, and they want to be friends, and they feel that they can both add 50% of the money, and they both feel that they can add 50% of the strength. And actually, sometimes it can be a really difficult conversation to say, oh, actually, I'm more important than you. I'm going to have 51% or 75% or 80%, different thresholds there. But I think our biggest mistake was that we didn't pay money on a decent partnership agreement. And did it cause any major problems in hindsight? Yes, I would recommend that everybody does it, but actually there wasn't any major problems, and I bought his shares for 4 years in, and of course you both negotiate and whatever, but it was fine. It was more, but I've heard a lot of cases where businesses have completely closed off the back of not getting the foundations in place in the first instance.
I think the most, the startup phase, especially when you start from nothing. So the business is not even a limited company. It is like you said, it's a hard conversation to have, because there's no value added apart from any money that's being put in. Is the fact that you're always going to need a boss. There's someone that needs to be the boss to make the final decision, because without that, you are going to have, like you said, you probably spent thousands of pounds arguing about a printer that was probably going to cost you 300 quid just in time. So the other thing is, you are growing an asset, and that asset, obviously, one day you hope to be sold. So you have to think about everything that goes into that package initially, what you're bringing to the table, and then what the fair representation of that is. But that's why, like you said, you would always recommend ideally someone getting something like a shareholders agreement in from the very beginning, to avoid those future, because you said after 4 years you separated as technically as a business partnership. Would have that happened potentially if you were a larger shareholder and you were able to bring the business the way that you wanted to? Whereas one of the things when you're 50-50 is you always have to run everything past the other one.
Absolutely. Yeah, you make a really good point. And would we have separated still? Probably. And I don't think that us separating was about us having disagreements. It was about us having a slightly different vision. And I think that Mike's, the listeners will have to ask him about it, but my understanding of Mike's vision was very much to run businesses rather than be in businesses. And his business after that was a hairdresser's, and he's done really well at it. But I think from my point of view, I was so passionate and so fixated on doing, and I wanted to make sure that this is probably a small business mentality. I wanted to make sure that every single client we dealt with, every single candidate, was if it was my son or daughter or my mum or dad that were going
that
for that
personal
job.
experience, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, so obviously, you guys went your separate ways effectively. In hindsight now, obviously, another 4 years on, happy with the decision? That was definitely what you feel is, should have happened.
Yeah. I think that was one of the best things I've done in business, in terms of how it was dealt with. I think that I got advice, Mike got advice, and actually I think that for me, a lot of business books will tell you how to do certain things, but I think one of the most important things about business and one of the biggest strengths of being a business owner is you can write the rule book. And from my point of view, I always wanted to do the right thing. Yeah. So I bought the shares for a decent rate. Mike and I ended up on good terms, and of course there was some negotiation. Of course there was, but I think from my point of view, I walked out of that deal with my head held high, and Mike walked out of that deal and was able to open another business and again continue with his life. And I think for me, that was a real turning point in my career, because I'd gone from being the salesperson to actually the person that approached Mike about buying him out and actually facilitated what I felt was a fair deal for us both. And I think that Thompson and Terry is such a different business to the one that was there then, but actually Mike is such a different entrepreneur to the one he was there, and so am I. And I think that that's a real turning point. When I look back to the chapters of my career, it was a deal that I think everybody came out of with a win-win-win. Yes, I probably did pay a little bit more than market rate for the business, but on the flip side, I think that because
you were getting advice at the time, weren't you, from a lot of people, and obviously your brand as Ben Thompson, as part of Thompson and Terry, you could have technically taken that elsewhere and just taken the clients probably with you. But like you said, that wasn't going to be something you were doing. Your integrity dictated that I was going to do it the right way, and you paid a fair price, like you said. So obviously the good thing is that in hindsight, you're happy with that decision. It's worked out well, and it's in business, especially with The Apprentice and Alan Sugar and everything like that, it is almost seen as you need to almost do one over on people all the time, and I kind of feel that's not what should be happening. It should be done the right way.
Yeah, definitely. I was brought up in Abingdon. I went to school in Abingdon. I played sport in Abingdon, certainly in the early stages. And I think from my point of view, a big thing is that, I can walk into a pub in Abingdon with no enemies whatsoever.
Until you did come dine with me.
Until I did come dine with me. I certainly won't be able to go to Reading without any enemies. But no, from my point of view, I think it's, as I've gone through that journey, I've gone from, I fell into a cold calling payday loan job that was completely unethical, to getting to the point now. And I think that as I look at my career, I've become more focused on purpose and values. And, the ultimate goal for my recruitment business is to become a B Corp. We're a very, very long way away from that.
What is a B Corp?
So a business that's for the greater good. So you look at the impact that you have on the community around you. You look at the impact that you have on your clients, your customers, the environment, etc., etc. And a really great business to look at is Jennings of Gardington. So their MD Paul Mabbott's a good friend of mine, and they're a business park, and they've put so much work into getting their B Corp, but actually it's brought the whole community together there. And I think that it's such a great way to do, because yes, they're commercial. They're a commercial business that wants to make profit, they're not a charity, but actually they do make profit, but they impact everyone around them in the right way. And that comes in an early stage in our mission statement. It's all about growing as a business, growing as a community, growing for our candidates, for our clients, and for our staff. And I think that's something that gets me up in the morning, certainly.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about that a bit more later.
So obviously your partnership with Mike, well, I guess you could say that was an unexpected challenge that you obviously didn't think that would, you'd have to go through that at the beginning. But is there any other unexpected challenges?
Yeah, definitely. I think I went through probably a 3-month period where I did the wrong thing in business, and there were huge repercussions of everything I did. So when I bought the business from Mike, I really wanted to scale it, and I had huge ambitions to really push it. And I upped our investment in everything by about 3 times. I went and took a big office that was probably 4 times what I had before.
We were going into the almost Brexit recession worries, I remember, in 2019.
Exactly.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of pressure in, the media that the world economy was going to be struggling and businesses were going to be in strain. And obviously being in recruitment, I can imagine that would have been on your mind. Your costs have just tripled. But how did you cope with that personally?
Being honest, difficulty. It was really, really tough. Like, looking back at it was, I think the point was really tough, but I think my reaction to things like that has always been to graft. And actually, although we had a really awful probably 3-4 month period, I really grafted, and actually as a result of that, personally, I think my own performance was probably, the 3 months after that was the best in my working career. And quite quickly, our business had become a lot more value led. I think our stats had increased rapidly. We started rebuilding our team. We created a graduate program, which we've now rolled out across 80 different businesses in Oxfordshire. And very, very quickly we recovered. But that period of time cost me a lot. I think that I doubted whether I could do business for a period of time in that time. And
where did that doubt come from? Was it just because of? So I'm assuming you had to downsize.
Yeah. Two people left the business. One of which was the person we were talking about earlier. But also somebody that had worked with me for a long time that was a mate of mine and still is a mate of mine that I play football with. And two people left the business, and it went down to me and one other that was a grad, albeit an incredibly talented grad, and now works for one of the huge brands in London, and still on good terms with our business. But we went from a business that had really big ambitions to grow to a business that was really licking their wounds, and we almost had to start again. Like, we really almost had to start again.
So you've just lost half your capacity with two team members leaving the business. You've had the best 3 months of your career. What happens next?
So next, the business just works. I launch a graduate program. So I did quite a bit of research across Oxfordshire, and I could only, what I like to think as a talented recruiter, I could only find 7 SMEs in Oxfordshire providing graduate programs.
That's incredible.
Which, considering we've got one of the best universities in the world and another that's pretty good.
With Oxford University on your doorstep.
And 98% of the businesses in Oxfordshire are SMEs. That was scary. So I looked at it and I thought, do you know what? In a small business, every small business has a finance need, a marketing need, a sales need, an administration need. And actually, a lot of those things to the small business owner that wears many hats are a chore or seen as what's a low value activity. And I think in any business book or in any podcast, we're all taught, let's do more and more of the high value stuff and employ somebody to do the low value stuff. But actually, if you look at graduates, so many of them come out of university want an experience. They can't get this job because they don't have experience.
The old cliche, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly that. So I was like, well, what is in a small business, or in our small business, because I wanted to prove that it could work, that is seen as a low value activity that actually, if I got somebody else to do, it could work for them and could work for us. So I created a graduate business executive job, which is a mix of searching for CVs, which is always the thing in every recruitment agency in the country. They employ junior people to do. But actually, by employing really decent level graduates, you're getting a higher caliber person searching for those.
Yeah.
But also give them bookkeeping, also give them social media, also teach them around business plans and more kind of complex stuff. So I straight away in my business, when I employed Shannon, is I took away the rubbish in our business that was a pain or was being outsourced and we didn't have control over it.
Did you basically do like your A customer, your B customer, your C customer, your D customer? You took away those like C and D customers essentially?
No, not really. So it wasn't really client focused. It was more chores. So it was more,
Right, okay.
It was more workload. So I took out of the business everything that I was doing that wasn't the high level that I could give to someone else, or everything that was being outsourced from our business that we didn't have control from. So we were working with a bookkeeper that was amazing, like really, really good, but we do our books once a month. And I thought, okay, what if we could have our books up to date every single day so we could always know the financial position of the business? So we did that. Shannon joined. Sorry, I've said Shannon's name again. She won't mind. She literally won't mind. So the first grad joined, and she was absolutely incredible. It worked really, really well. She was promoted within 9 months. And she then went to work for a big brand in London, albeit on really, really good terms. And it made such commercial sense for our business. And it took somebody that was, yes, albeit a first-class grad from a decent uni, to have a promotion on their CV and really tangible experience.
And a small business, when you're doing a lot more than you do in a large organization,
Exactly.
Going into a small business, everyone's doing a bit of finance, you're doing a bit of marketing, you're doing a bit of sales. You go into a large organization, it's a lot more, the role is a lot more smaller when it comes to moving between departments.
Exactly that, because actually big graduate programs, I often see candidates who have dropped out of them because they've had their first 6 months within big business X. They've really enjoyed being in the compliance department or the whatever department, the legal department, family law department, and then
Events department.
The events department. And then they've moved to the horrible recruitment department and absolutely hated it and then quit. But the benefit of a graduate program with an SME is every day you're doing lots of different things that are adding value to the business. So off the back of that, we're now on to our fifth graduate. All of them have worked, and we've rolled it out across 80 clients across Oxfordshire, and it's worked really, really well.
That sounds fun. To be honest, that sounds something that we'd be interested in. It's something that I'm a big believer in. I went to university for 5 years. I came out and I ended up in a British Gas call centre. I was applying for jobs and everything that was telling me you need more experience. And I was like, well, I can't get that experience without starting a role. So it does resonate home how that could work. So obviously, you've gone through a tough period. You've brought yourself out of it. We're approaching what I guess is quite a tough time, would you say, Dan?
Tough time coming up for you, yes. Are we going into this now?
As in
The pandemic?
Yes.
I was going to do my game before, that's why.
Let's do the game.
Let's do a game. I like a game. I feel like I need a game.
This is my bit.
There we go. What's the game?
Excited. So this game is called Business Brawl.
Great.
And it's hopefully going to seamlessly link us into the next question.
Brilliant.
So basically, I'm going to give you the name of a business, and then you've got to pair it up with another business in the industry. Very, very simple. So if I said Pepsi, you would say
Coca-Cola.
easy peasy.
There we go.
However, you're against the clock.
Great.
And we do have, we did test run yesterday, and our guest, Steve, he scored, was it 12?
He scored 12, yeah.
Scored 12. So that's what you've got to beat.
It's quite rapid.
But I bet he's bribed you, hasn't he? He's bribed you, hasn't he?
We may have added a few to that figure. Let's see how you do.
Okay, so I do have a little ding.
Great.
There we go. for each one that I think you get correct. I mean, Dan, you're going to be scoring.
Oh,
aren't
and
you, on
I'm
this
going to be counting. Yeah.
one? All right, here we go. So your first business, and your timer starts now. Here we go. Tesco,
Sainsbury's,
BT,
Virgin,
Nike,
Adidas,
Boots,
Superdrug,
HSBC,
Lloyds TSB,
Tesla,
Metro,
eBay,
Amazon, Vinted,
Dixons,
PC World,
Samsung,
Nokia,
Thompson and Terry,
Allen Associates,
Royal Mail,
Amazon,
Visa.
MasterCard, Maestro.
Time is up.
I felt pressure there.
Well, I can see the pressure in your face.
God.
It's the sound effect, the music, isn't it?
Do you want to know how many you got?
How many?
You're not going to believe it. You got 12.
12.
Wow.
12.
Well,
think we
I
may
feel like my downside is I tried to be funny halfway through and compare a Tesla to a Metro. But,
Metro,
I was
it's all
thinking
down.
Metro?
They're both cars.
I can't believe Dan didn't pull you up on that one. They're a make of
I
cars.
was trying to get you the top score. That was why. Yeah, that was my first car, a Metro.
Yeah.
Great. Car.
So that is 12 points, which puts you equal on the leaderboard with Steve. So congratulations.
Great. We'll have to have an arm wrestle afterwards to see.
We
who's
we
top.
could arrange that. We can arrange that.
Okay, so it doesn't really seamlessly link at all into the to talking about the pandemic, but let's talk about the pandemic. Obviously, one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah. I think it was for most businesses that I speak to, us included. I think that you guys as an organisation, I'm sure as well, we went from being a business that 99.9999% of what we did was permanent office recruitment. And for the networking business, 100% of what we did was in-person events. And suddenly offices were closed, and suddenly we didn't know when offices were going to be reopened. I think that the first kind of 3-week lockdown was quite nice, walking my very naughty Labrador in the middle of the day, and it was quite nice weather. But actually, I think that there was genuine fear for business owners. I think that one of the things that I had done off the back of my, I guess the biggest challenge we were speaking about earlier, was I'd become really fixated on putting reserves into the business and really keeping reserves. And I think the thing that in hindsight I've come out of COVID with is, if we hadn't have built reserves the way we did, I would have been a million times more stressed.
Do you have kind of a rule for the reserves that you keep in the business?
Yes and no. So I've got a personal goal that I like a set amount of money to come to me. And I've got a rule in my business that I like to double my investment with everything. So off the back of that, our reserves do go past this, but we keep 2 years of basic costs within our business. And those 2 years of basic costs include things that we could cut, but from my point of view, I would never want one of my decisions to impact someone's life. So I wouldn't put somebody's job at risk. Of course, if they weren't performing, that's that's on them. But at the same time, I would never want to put one of my business decisions on someone else. So yeah, I keep 2 years, within the business.
Obviously, with COVID, businesses aren't hiring, business offices aren't open. With the networking, in person stopped. I believe with the networking, you guys innovated though, and brought things online.
Yeah. So the networking business, we did exactly that. We tried to not create online events. We tried to give the closest to normality that we could, and we tried to give the experience of our online events to be as close to in person as possible. So we were doing the little breakout rooms as people arrived. We were doing the little huddles. We were doing all of those kind of things. And then at the end of the meeting, rather than just closing it, we were just letting the meeting run as people gradually left, like you would in a normal thing. Within the recruitment business, we've never been sales focused. So we volunteered. Like we didn't make sales calls to our clients, but we rewrote, and we've never rewritten a CV that we've sent to a candidate. So sorry, to a client, but I think we rewrote like 300 CVs or something throughout the pandemic to help people that had been made redundant. So
Yeah.
From us, it was the pivot was really what we were doing already, but it reconfirmed we wanted to be that business that did the right thing and come out of the pandemic not richer, but at the same time have done the right thing was the big thing for us.
And how did you cope essentially? I mean, with me, I found it was, you know, particularly challenging mentally. You know, not knowing, you know, I think control is a big thing that obviously business owners are used to having, and not having that control. You know, you're at the, you know, midst of a global pandemic was one of the hardest things to try and get your head around how you could plan and look after people as well.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, it was really, really tough. Like it was really tough, and I think that you've hit the nail on the head in terms of the tough part wasn't for me necessarily like the actual revenue really, because there was furlough, there was this, that, and the other. But I think what was really tough is that we didn't know when it was going to stop. And it was so difficult to plan, and it was so difficult to reassure people around me. You know, we've got 100 members in the networking organization, and we were seeing members genuinely really scared. And you know, I was speaking to a lot of people that suffer with the mental health and whatever else. And for me, I think it was not being able to do anything to help what was, I think, the toughest thing.
Yeah, I mean, I was on, you know, virtual networking events, you know, a couple of months into the pandemic, and you know, people would regularly break down into tears almost. You know, they were such at a loss of, they didn't know what to do and, you know, how to keep going. And I think obviously that's one of the most resilient aspects of, or positives, I guess, from the experiences. You know, those business owners that were able to get through that, there can't be anything worse than that.
No, there can't, because I think that business and personal, there isn't a third thing, is there? There's business, there's personal, there's business, there's personal. And what COVID and the pandemic was doing is it was absolutely ripping apart the personal side of things for so many people. I don't think anyone that I've spoken to doesn't know somebody that it ripped apart. But then on the flip side, it was impacting all of our businesses as well. And I think that was the single thing. It was almost like a game of, have you ever played that board game Buckaroo? It was almost like that, but you were like kind of putting 2 bricks on the poor little donkey.
So businesses started opening up again. How was it in recruitment? Did it come back strong, or did it take a bit of time?
I'm not sure really. Let me reflect on this, because I think that we came out of COVID with the expectation that it would take a really long time. So if I look at our kind of financial targets, and if I look at our expectations, we did all of them and more so. Yes, it was a little bit quiet, and I think that there was quite a lot of fear in the market, particularly from candidates. I think there was really the appetite, the real appetite from businesses to hire. That there was definitely that appetite, because I think that what entrepreneurs do and during this time is look for opportunities, and they need people to deliver that. So there was definitely that, but I was seeing fear, like what happens if there's another lockdown? What happens if, like, will they still pay me? Will this still happen? So that was really there. And I think from a networking point of view, there was a real stage in networking which I don't think we've 100% recovered from yet. Looking at the numbers that you get across all of the events across the UK, is you had, during the pandemic, everybody suddenly went online. It just happened. But then after, like when it was sort of coming to an end, you had X percentage of people that really wanted to stay online because they didn't feel safe. And I still know a couple of people who fall into that category. And then you had the other percentage of people that hated the idea of online and really wanted to be back in person. And then you had the middle amount that, you know, the serial networkers who don't really mind. But off the back of that, then you had people, none of the events having quite the numbers that they had before. So it was really a weird time, I think, for the whole country and for most businesses.
So you've moved from, you know, COVID, people are recruiting again. There's been you know, a huge pull on the labour market. How is the current recruitment market in the UK?
Incredibly strong, incredibly strong. So, from my point of view, employers up and down the country are employing staff, and there's very few people that are unemployed at the moment, which means the market's really, really strong. I think the challenges for employers is hiring the volume of talent, and gone are the days where we can put an advert out and have lots of people apply. But from our point of view, what we're seeing in the market is there's genuine opportunity for jobs. There are lots of great jobs out there, and there are still candidates out there. But I think that it's in a way easier than before to get really good people into your business, as weird as that sounds. And I think this is quite unconventional for a recruiter to say. It takes a long time, but actually, if you follow the right thorough process to find a great person, you're going to get people that really want to work for you because you're poaching them from somewhere else, as opposed to having 50 people apply and you have to sift through 50 CVs and might make a mistake. So from my point of view, I'm seeing that the recruitment market in Oxfordshire particularly, and wider UK, is tough to find people, but there are still gems out there. And actually, I think that in terms of success rate, not just for us, but in terms of our clients, we are seeing a really good market.
And that's obviously really positive, considering all the press and the negative and almost like impending doom that's been over like the last 9 months essentially. So effectively what you're saying is all of that side of things isn't going to affect, as you see it at the moment, the recruitment market.
No, it's just I think if employers have the mindset that I want 5 people to interview tomorrow, that's where this press is coming from. And of course there's certain sectors. So a friend of mine runs a driving recruitment agency, and off the back of international workers and Brexit, which we were talking about earlier, of course there is a shortage there. Other friends of mine run different businesses, but I think on the whole, for most jobs in Oxfordshire, that there are lots of jobs in Oxfordshire, so if you're a candidate, it's easy to get a job.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I think that if you're an employer and you're really willing to spend time to wait for the right person and really kind of assess yourself in terms of why would somebody work for my organisation, what am I offering, what is that career journey, then actually all of the businesses that we've worked with and talked to are getting those good hires.
Excellent. I suppose we move on now to Thompson and Terry. What is the future? And obviously with OBCN as well, and your investments, how do you see the next couple of years?
Yeah, so Thompson and Terry is in an interesting situation at the moment. We've got 2 grads that are 6 months into their program, and they're doing really well. So they're going to be working towards their promotion. We've got my number 2 that is going to be returning from maternity leave, and I caught up with her quite recently. She's really looking forward to coming back. So I think the last year has been interesting. Commercially, it's been good. In terms of our team structure, it's been built for the future. So growth, and we aren't going to be suddenly becoming a 10-person business, but we're going to becoming a 5-person business this year, and then we're going to become a 6-person business next year. So I think that it's going to be an understated Thompson and Terry, but it's going to be a Thompson and Terry that our turnover will grow by a percentage, and our profit will grow by the same percentage, which we're really excited about. The networking business, I think, Mike.
So how many members are you now at with OBCN?
So 100 members.
Brilliant.
So from our point of view, Mike's done a great job over the last 14 years. So I think from coming back to this respect piece, I'm not changing anything in OBCN. The members have bought OBCN because of what Mike created, not what I created. But my big focus is about building the business to stay similar, but tiny tweaks. So we're focusing on the moment quite a lot about upping the numbers that we're getting to events. We're putting a big focus on what extra can we offer to members, as opposed to changing what we're offering. We're thinking about what are those extra layers. So and actually already this year we've seen quite a lot bigger businesses attend a couple of our events, which is
so you're
which
moving
is
towards different markets.
Yeah, so keep what we've got, but just a diverse course. I think the best networking events and the best events is having a diverse course. I think that the worst thing that nobody wants to go to is have 10 businesses that do exactly the same thing, exactly the same size. Yeah. Actually, it's about building that kind of diverse network of members.
Last piece, Dan.
I was going to ask you about OBCN. So obviously, if anyone that's listening in the local area, how do they get in contact? How do they join?
Yeah, so anyone's welcome to almost any OBCN event. We do a virtual board meeting for business owners. So apart from that, any OBCN event is welcome to also just Google the Oxford Business Community Network, and we'll come up. We're on Eventbrite. Most of our events are on there, but also we're quite active on all the social channels as well. So yeah, anyone listening, we aren't a heavy sell member organisation. Come along a couple of times, and if you want to join, ask for details and we'll send it across to you.
Amazing.
Great stuff. And obviously, where will people find more information on Thompson and Terry?
Again, just Google Thompson and Terry, and we will come up. Or one of the things that we didn't talk about today that's been really good for our business is we rank really well on Google now. So Google Abingdon Recruitment Agency or Oxford Recruitment Agency, and I'm sure we'll come up as well.
Fantastic.
What a journey! What an amazing story! Thanks so much for sharing. I'm sure there's lots of useful information there for people to take on board.
Absolutely.
Any final words from you, Dan?
Just been a pleasure, really. Hearing the story from I think the chickens is going to be a personal favourite of mine for a long time. It was
excellent.
I see what you did there.
But yeah, obviously, hearing from your accident and the way that you've created these number of businesses that you're currently have your hands in is phenomenal to see. And yeah, we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Good luck with everything. Yeah.
And hopefully we'll have you on again in a few years, Ben, and we'll be talking about future enterprises.
The next business has got to be another chicken business, isn't it?
Exactly.
That's the goal. That's what I'm going away with.
Yeah. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
We want to keep you up to date with all the latest episodes, so don't forget to hit that magical like and subscribe button, a bit like this one on the table.
What is this button, Dan?
This magical button can do anything you like. What would you like it to do?
Like turn you into a chicken?
Here we go.